Today, I have a very special guest with me. He is the host of Celebs Go Dating and Married at First Sight UK edition, as well as USA Today's top columnist, Paul Brunson. Hi there, Paul.
What's up, young lady? Good to see you. Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's so nice to see you. It's a bummer I can't actually see you and touch you and give you a big hug like last time, but it's nice to have you.
I know. I tell you what, this pandemic that we're in, right? Not a good thing. Not a good thing. But I think we're coming to the end of it.
I agree. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel for many people. There is definitely light.
I was gonna say, yeah, for some people, and then even on top of it, some people have not done any of this. Some people have completely disregarded this and gone on about their life. But I guess we can get into that a little bit.
Yeah, because it has affected dating and relationships. But like you said, we'll go there. So, Paul, I had the pleasure of meeting you a couple of years back at one of our industry conference. I know you've been in the industry, matchmaking, love, dating, and relationships for over a decade. And you're one of LinkedIn top voices. I know that just knowing more about you, one of the things that stood out to me about you is that you had the opportunity to work with these billionaires and that transformed your life. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Working with billionaires, but also interviewing billionaires has been, the best education for me. As one of my jobs, because I'm Jamaican, so I have 10 jobs, okay? And one of them you mentioned is as a columnist for USA Today. And there I've interviewed more billionaires than any journalist. So I really have a good feel for what billionaires do, why they do it. And the reason why, I'm so intrigued by them is because, you have to keep it like they're exceptional. Like whether you like them or not, they're exceptional. Today, by the way, did you hear the news? As we're recording this, you saw the news about Kanye West?
Did you see it? I did not. And I had on GMA, but I did not hear it. And so if it wasn't on GMA or Today, I didn't hear it. Or I didn't hear Makeup Done.
All right. So officially today, Kanye West, at least his publicists have now promoted this, that he's now worth $6.6 billion, which makes him the wealthiest African American who's ever walked this planet. Wow. And that's really interesting when you think about that. And I think the reason why it's so intriguing to me is that most of us are entrepreneurs or in business, and the score in business is basically revenue and basically, net worth to a certain degree. And so these are folks who have reached the top 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why I was so intrigued by them. And, how they've changed my life is just simply learning the habits, watching certain things that are done, because I will say this, the most successful people do things roughly the same way. And whether that's in business, whether that's socially, or whether that's in romantic relationships, the most successful people typically do things the same way.
Wow. And so as you've been interviewing all these wealthy, affluent, very influential people, give us a golden nugget. What's the one thing that if you had to start all over tomorrow that you would start with?
Oh man, I would start with like 20. Right? I'd be greedy because they're greedy too. So I'd be greedy. But what I say, one concept that I learned from Oprah Winfrey and Enver Yücel. So these are two of the billionaires that I worked for. And what I've emulated in my life is this whole principle of never eating alone. And the whole idea around that is that most of us get our information from, watching news channels or reading the newspaper. Yeah. But whenever we do that, what we're really getting is the news that happened yesterday, mm-hmm. or the news that happened earlier in the day, right? It's news that has already happened. Mm-hmm. But if you can assemble a group of people, even if they're not the most influential people, just simply people who have different ideas, different areas of expertise, but you can put them all together and then listen to them talk, listen to them debate out ideas, what you're actually getting is the news that will happen tomorrow.
Oh.
So never eating alone, it's a concept that I learned from these billionaires. And there's also a great book. It's written by Keith Ferrazzi, and it's called Never Eat Alone, and it expands on that principle. So that's what I would do.
I love that. And speaking, I think that's even a great golden nugget for people who are looking for a romantic relationship. Never eat alone. Engage in conversations with people around you. I think so often we go to a place, well, pre-COVID, right? We go to places and we're so busy looking at our phone and we're just there to eat, and maybe we talk to the bartender, but we forget that there's other people around us, and interacting with other people. You just never know what doors and opportunities it's going to present.
Yeah, you never know. Like I always live by, throughout all of my matchmaking, I've lived by this very simple premise, and that is love comes at unexpected times, and it comes in unexpected packages.
Thank you.
If you could just open your mind to those two concepts, your whole world is going to change. So I completely agree with you.
God, that resonates so much. And, let's talk about how love has changed through the lockdown, through the pandemic, and we're getting ready to now re-emerge in a post-pandemic world. I know that you work with a lot of celebrities, working in both Celebs Go Dating and also Married at First Sight. You're dealing with a lot of singles. Let's talk about first the singles. When it comes to relationships, what do you think is going to change in how we form relationships post the pandemic?
That's a good one. Good one. So here's one thing that we have to really embrace. And this is a concept that's not very popular. A matter of fact, I was recently on Good Morning America, and I talked about this concept, and I got a lot of people messaging me afterwards that they were a little upset, and they were all from Silicon Valley.
Oh.
And here's the reason why, is that, so the pandemic has clearly made us all reliant on technology. Yeah. Right? You and I were talking through Zoom. It's one of these where we have to use technology. So when it comes to dating, we have to use technology. Where do we go? The Facebooks of the world, the Tinders of the world, the Bumbles of the world, right? Mm-hmm. And what we have to make sure that we never separate is the fact that those entities are for-profit entities. Mm-hmm. Facebook is one of the biggest, people don't realize Facebook is the largest player right now in the dating space, right? They are $1 trillion, or nearly $1 trillion company. You have the Match Group, owns Match.com, owns Tinder, owns Hinge, owns absolute myriad of entities. They're worth about 50 billion. And then you have Bumble, who just went public, right? Worth now about 20 billion in terms of, when this, when we're recording this. Now, these are for-profit companies that are now responsible for delivering profits, right? They're responsible for this. How do they get their profits? Well, they get their profits by making sure that the users use their products more. Right. Whether that be you staying on them longer throughout the day, staying out them longer throughout the years. And the reason why I bring this up is because the technology companies, I believe, have the largest influence over dating. So as a result of the pandemic, we're more reliant on technology. The technology companies now need to make money. So what's happening, what we're beginning to see, I think we're in a very precarious situation where a lot of our dating behavior is being shaped by these large for-profit entities.
It's interesting you talk about behavior specifically, because one thing that I talk about with clients, and I just talk about when I'm talking to singles, people talk about how they're so fatigued by, I'm so tired of swiping, I'm so tired of this. And what I say to them is like, well, if you really think about it, you're doing that behavior all the time, whether or not you're on a dating app. Why? When you're on Facebook, you're scrolling through and you're swiping left and right to look at pictures. When you're on Instagram, what are you doing? You're scrolling through. So that behavior is a behavior that we're constantly receiving some sort of dopamine form. And as we get used to it, that's the same behavior that we're using to be able to find our partner. So what happens by the time you log on to Tinder or you log on to Bumble while you're sitting at the grocery line or waiting, and you're just kind of scrolling through, it's the same mindless mentality. So I really like that you said that, because I agree with you. Technology has become, if not already is, so predominant in our lives. Everything is scheduled around technology. Almost everything. Oh, wait, let me look at my calendar. Oh, wait, yeah, I forgot to turn off the lights. Let me go ahead and hit Alexa home. Oh, everything is becoming about technology. And I have to say that this is a very interesting point, and I wonder where it will go in the future. Have you seen the episode of Black Mirror?
Yeah, you just crazy. I've seen Black Mirror is one of my favorites. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a UK based show too. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a reality. I mean, it could be a reality where now you're getting matched based off these two, I guess, algorithms, and then it's going to tell you how long it's going to last. And you know what I mean? It's a little bit scary. I prefer a little bit more of the organic approach. Don't get me wrong. I'm still a proponent of online dating because it allows people to connect with other people. But like anything else, I think it's a matter of regulating how much we are on it and recognizing that we shouldn't be logging on every 5 or 10 minutes just because we're bored and we're standing in line somewhere.
But you know, you just brought up an interesting point, and I want to ask you a question here. So you say that you are more of a fan of organic approach. What is the organic approach to dating? What is that?
So I'm an 80s girl, 80s, 90s girl. I'm dating myself. Not that I'm that old, but I'm 39. So an organic approach, what I remember was when it was back in the day in the 90s and the early 2000s, where you see a guy sees you, you have this little banter back and forth, you both come together. There wasn't all this pressure. It was like, I'm getting to know you. I appreciated that a gentleman would approach me, or if I was interested, for me to approach him. And just the ability to be able to just meet, like, without the pressure of like, oh my God, I'm going on this date, or oh my God, I have to meet this person. For me, organic is when you allow it to happen. And even if you have an interest and it doesn't happen, there's always something you can take away from that experience.
So bring it back to the 80s, bring it back to the 90s. I tell you, you know, the music was better. That's for sure.
Hip hop was better.
Oh man, hip hop was better. I mean, I was born. Where were you? Were you in New York or no?
I was in Brooklyn. So I grew up most of my life in Brooklyn. So Brooklyn for me, I was listening to Biggie, Erykah Badu, The Roots, Sugar Hill Gang. Like, that was my jam.
Yeah. So I was born in Queens, you know. I mean, we had everybody that you just said. And from the hip hop side, it was like LL Cool J, it was Run DMC, it was a different time. And I oftentimes wonder, like, are we just nostalgic about that? You know, because I remember my parents saying, oh man, this rap is nothing. You should have been around to hear Marvin Gaye or, you know, Thelonious Monk or, you know, folks like this. And they would reminisce about that. And then I'd hear my grandfather say, oh, but you should have heard about Charlie Parker and blah, 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 blah. So I wonder how much of that is nostalgic versus was it really better, you know? But I'm with you though. I think the kind of that 90s was like the epic. That was an epic time. Time.
It definitely was. You know, when it comes to, I think, to organic dating and what that looks like in today's world, I think one thing that I've noticed and I've talked to a lot of women clients that I coach, they say, it's like men don't know how to court anymore, right? And I'm like, men have become lazy. And I'm like, why do you say that? Well, because now, take example, Bumble, we have to make the first move. So now we have to put in this effort, and a guy can choose to take a step back. And maybe if we are the ones to initiate, he's just going to take a step back and let us kind of guide the whole thing. And most women that I coach, they're like, that's not what I'm looking for. So I'm curious from your perspective, Paul, and from the people that you've interacted with and you've coached and you've interviewed, is it true? Do you think that men have become lazier because of the apps? Do you hear that?
You know, this is such a great question, and I think we could talk about this for 5 hours. Right? So, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Right, a lot of thoughts on this. My quick answer is yes. On average, I think that on average, right, I think that men and the ladies, I think that we all have become lazier in our approach. And it's because of technology. If you think about the example that you just gave, which is a great example, is the one of you're walking down the street. Well, someone has to see you. They have to then run across the street to you. They have to walk up. Like, that is more effort than just swiping. You know what I mean? That like that by itself, without them even saying anything to you. So have we become lazier? Yes, as a collective. But the one area that I don't think we talk about enough is that while we see marriage rates going down, while we see divorce rates going up, there are certain categories of the populace in every nation in the world that has sustained marriage rates, that have sustained divorce rates or divorce rates that have dipped. And you also see people in those categories putting in the work. As a matchmaker for a decade, right? It's fascinating when you see a man come into the agency and they are ready for marriage, right? When they're ready for marriage, they're willing to literally crawl on their knees across the country if you could put the right person in front of them. Like, literally, that's the type of work. They will crawl over broken glass, wow, right, for that person. But why? Because they're ready. Mm-hmm. The reason why I think we as a collective around the world, we say, people have gotten lazy or men have gotten lazy, is because most people are now into casual dating. There's less desire to actually be in a committed relationship. These are all drivers behind people not wanting to put in work because they don't have to. Mm-hmm. But there's still, and this is very important for everyone to really know, and I'm speaking from, I have seen this, right? This is experience, is that there still is a significant number of people, women and men, who are willing to put in the work and who do put in the quote unquote work, who do court, who do properly go after someone in what you would call, a traditional fashion.
Right. And I think it's interesting that you talk about and say as a collective we've gotten lazier. And I have to agree. Oh my God. We don't even we have drive-throughs, right? Everything now has a drive-through. Starbucks has a drive-through. Why? Because we don't want to get out of the car. We don't want to walk. We want to save time. And I think that it's a matter of us taking a step back and being like, okay, is it really that guys are lazy, or how am I contributing to also being lazy? Am I just wanting to sit back and wait for the guys to do all the work? And I think too, what plays into that is we have different flirting styles as well. This is something that I talk a lot with matchmaking clients, coaching clients, and I'm sure you've heard it. There's research that actually supports this. There's 5 different types of flirting style. And we have to educate people on these different types of flirting styles, because sometimes in the organic approach that we would like for someone to approach us, or even in online dating, how a person messages is a reflection of their flirting style. And everyone doesn't have this ha ha ha, he banter, or that little batty eyes kind of flirting style. Some people are very polite and they're just very sincere, and it takes them a little bit longer to warm up. So I also think that we kind of have to take a step back and recognize for ourselves, how do we flirt? How do we send off those signals, right? To let the person know, hey, come talk to me, I'm interested in you.
Versus... Yeah, 100%, which is why something that I know you preach, and a lot of our friends who are in the dating industry preaches, is why all relationships really begin with self and an awareness of self and understanding what is your personality, what is your attachment style, what are these things. The best time to work on your marriage, this is something that I say over and over and over and over and over again, and not everyone gets me when I say it. And I say the best time to work on your marriage is before you get married. That's the best time to work on your actual marriage, is before. And for those who get it, they say, okay, Paul, I'm with you. So what do you do? What do I have to do? Mm-hmm. Well, it's what you and I are talking about right now. It's becoming aware of self. It's really understanding how you operate, because once you get into that relationship, it is then 100% about how you effectively communicate. And a lot of that communication is, your strategy around communication, your understanding around communication, all of that happens prior to you getting married. So absolutely, it begins with self, and you have to be aware of self first.
I love that. A healthy relationship always starts with you. That's the truth of it. I say that to people all the time, so definitely agree with you on that. You brought up marriage. Let's talk about the lockdown. What are relationships, committed relationships, going to look like now, this post-pandemic? I know when the pandemic hit here in North America, they were saying, oh my God, divorce rates are spiking. All of a sudden, all this issues that have been put under the rug are now surfacing because these two people are having to be in quarantine together. And for other couples, it was actually a really great time to reconnect. And then for some, it was business as usual because they both worked from home. Nothing had really changed. So in your opinion, how do you see committed relationships changing in this post-pandemic world?
Yeah, I think they are going to change. I truly believe that committed relationships will change as a result of the pandemic. And my prediction is they simply become stronger. I think that's the most succinct way to say it. And the reason why is because we now understand the value of being in a relationship. And we understand now not just the value, but the cost of being in a relationship. And it's not just being in any relationship. We understand the value and the cost of being in a good relationship. You just mentioned the business as usual folks. We also understand the value and the cost of being in a bad relationship. And for a lot of those relationships, those couples that broke up, I actually am happy for them. And the reason why I'm happy for them is because they got out of bad situations that they may have stayed in and been in for another 15, 20 years before they came to the realization, oh my God, I'm with the wrong person.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that the divorce rate is where it is, not because of when you look at the list, it's like, bad communication, you see finance is a problem, you see infidelity, right? No. Most of the divorce rate comes from the fact that you have two people who have no business being in a relationship or in a marriage. That's the reason why the divorce rate is where it is. And so I think that we eventually become stronger, not substantially, but I think there's a small uptick of becoming stronger. Why? Because we understand the value now and we understand the cost of being in a relationship.
How was the pandemic for you and your wife? You travel a lot. You live between the United States and the UK. You have two beautiful kids that you homeschool as well. So was it business as usual for you guys? Did you guys have to adjust? How was that whole experience?
For us, it was a blessing. I mean, on the real, I've had more sex in this last year than I probably have had in 20 years. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's been good for us, but it's because of what you said. We already had that structure. We already work together. We already have our kids, in the home because of homeschooling. We're traveling back and forth. Also, within the pandemic, my business didn't change. I've shot 3 TV shows in the pandemic. It's one of those where we've just had to adapt to what has happened, but things haven't substantially changed for us. With the exception of more sex. Like that's pretty much the biggest difference, with the pandemic.
That's so funny. So more sex, pandemic equals more sex. Let's hope post-pandemic equals just as much amount of sex.
I tell you, I want to keep this going. When everyone was like, the vaccines, I was the only one saying, I don't know about this vaccine, guys. Yeah, maybe no. but yeah, it's it's interesting because a lot of our friends will come to us and say, wow, we're struggling because I'm with my spouse all day long, or my kids are here. How do we cope? And then we'll be able, we're giving suggestions based on past experience. But think about this. 4 years ago, we were kind of considered the odd ones.
Mm-hmm.
Homeschooling, you work together? You what? Husband and wife
How
work
can you
together?
be at home all day with your partner? Don't you get sick of them? And then you came on the weekends too? Don't you get a break?
See, it sounds like you get that too, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah. But you turn around and you say, no, when you're in a relationship with your best friend,
There we go.
then
It's different.
it's different. It's a joy, right?
Yes.
So then it goes back to, well, then maybe you're not in the right relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: the foundation of any long, thriving, flourishing relationship is friendship. And then you said it right there: best friend is friendship. And people talk about communication is key. And I say, people will be like, "Oh, that's such a cliche." Okay. The problem is, and the reason that it's hard sometimes to really set that foundation is when you're listening and communicating to respond all the time versus listening and communicate to understand to your partner, because that's what really begins to forge that foundation. I spend with my husband 7 days, almost 24/7. You know what I mean? And then when I have to travel, like I'm getting ready to travel, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna leave me and I'm gonna miss you." I'm like, "I'm gonna miss you too, but you know what? We're gonna talk on the phone every day. We'll FaceTime." And for us, like, I legitimately miss him. Even sometimes when he's here, I legitimately miss him. I'm like, "Hey, babe, you went out to do some stuff today. How are you? Like, I miss you." And he's like, "Oh, thanks." And it's, and what it comes down to is we have built a really great friendship. Now, don't get me wrong. I have my temper. He's got his temper. He's got his personality. I'm sure as you and your wife have your personalities.
Yes.
But we're able to work through it. It's about knowing how to work through it, right?
Yeah, it is. And what I love about what you said something I thought really powerful. You talked about how you're in the house with your husband. He may go out for just a few hours and you miss him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is the reason why not only is technology dangerous, but pop culture is dangerous, because that message that you just gave is one that I full-heartedly agree with, but pop culture thinks different. You know what pop culture says? "Oh, you must be needy."
Yep.
If he just goes for a few hours and you're needy. No, you love him, right? And this is where, you talk about, well, how does that touch with technology? Well, these type of messages of, okay, if you miss your husband for a few hours, right? Technology someone will say you're needy. That type of message will get retweeted a million times. That type of message will get shared, right? Because if it bleeds, it leads, right? That's kind of how we operate. We share things. Exactly. Then people see it enough and they say, "Oh, this must be how you operate in a relationship. You shouldn't have to miss anyone." And that, then they go. And so you could see where technology, because this technology proliferating, that technology can become very dangerous, very dangerous.
So I'm curious to know, and changing so I'm changing subject here. I'm curious to know, you work with celebrities. A lot of women and men, they are high achievers, high performers. They got their life together. They've reached a pinnacle in their career. Everything is going smooth sailing, and now they're ready to share a partner with. Some of the women and the men that I coach and I matchmake, they're looking for that celebrity type status person. What can you share with me about a celebrity in terms of, are they really like real people? You see them in the Us Weekly magazines. They're like us, right? And what are they looking for when it comes to a partnership or a relationship?
Yeah, this is where, we need another couple hours for this one. This is my quick answer, right? So one of the most successful shows I've been doing for the last couple of years is called Celebs Go Dating. And it's really about myself and my partner, Anna Williamson. And what we do is we help the UK's, most eligible celebrities to find partners. And one of the things that I find most interesting about that, right? So we've now worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of celebrities, and then their celebrity friends will come and ask us for help after the show, is that a lot of it depends on how caught up the celebrity is in their celebrity. This is very important, right? So you'll find people who have been in the so one is, let me just say this in terms of like celebrity. There's social media influencer, etc. But then there's, okay, I was in a boy band for 10 years and I've sold out arenas. There's like that level of celebrity.
Right.
And what's really interesting about the highest level of celebrity is that there's a lot of emotional challenges and issues and self-awareness issues, because it's very hard to understand who you are when the public sees you for one thing,
right,
knows you for one thing, and you are compensated based on that one thing. So then you try to play up that one thing. So then you begin to forget about the 99 other things you are, right? So these are real issues. And this is the reason why when you look through these celebrities and you say, oh my gosh, the divorce rates are much higher, infidelity is much higher, right? Therapy, right? There's much greater need, even though everyone needs a therapist, but there's much greater need there. Why? It's because of that. So that's the reason why I say it depends on how wrapped up the celebrity is in their actual celebrity, and why you will often see celebrities who were maybe famous 5 years ago for something, right? Now they're ready for a relationship. Why? Because they fully have found who they are.
It took time.
Exactly. But my short answer is this: is I would say that you really, when you're looking for someone, I don't necessarily think you should pinpoint and say, I want a celebrity, right? And we could kind of debate what that means. But when I think about celebrity, I think of someone who has widespread notoriety, right? Instead, what I think you should do is it's acceptable is you could look for someone who's world class. Someone who's world class doesn't necessarily mean they're a celebrity, right? I've had clients who, run a $50 million business. You think, is that world class?
Sure.
Absolutely. Sure. Less than 1% of 1% of entrepreneurs run a $50 million US plus business. That makes that person world class. And these are people who don't have an Instagram. You wouldn't walk down the street and be able to point, but they're world class at something. I think that people who are world class, whether it be in their business, in athletics, in whatever it may be, these are folks who I think it's okay to want to be in a relationship, because if you're in a relationship with someone who's world class, you're in a relationship with someone who has the highest level of ambition, and maybe you value ambition. They have a high level of, if they're, I don't know, in art, high level of creativity. So, but they're the highest level of that. So going after world class, yeah, that makes sense. Going after celebrity, very dangerous route.
Interesting. I think people get blindsided by all the glamour, the glitz, the paparazzi, the headlines, you know what I mean? And to be honest, I've worked with a couple of celebrities from here in North America, different reality shows, and just coaching them in their love. And you're right, they do sometimes, the how involved are they in themselves doesn't allow them to see the areas or the places where they're really falling short, or other areas where they need support in, right? But like you said, they get paid for that one thing. So it's like, if I explore this other aspect of myself, that's going to change me, and I'm no longer going to be able to produce revenue based on this.
Exactly. And we know dollars make sense, so dollars drive a lot. They drive a lot.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, Paul, I want to ask you, what is your number one love tip for dating in a post-pandemic world?
I'd say understand self. It's that simple. I won't even go the self-love route, which I do think is very important, but I think just become aware of who you are. Become aware of the things that you love. Become aware of your values. Become aware of your personality type. Take a Myers-Briggs. Understand, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you a thinker or are you a feeler, right? Become aware of self, your flirting style, your communication styles, right? The more you can become aware of self, the more, actually, let me even say this, The more you become aware of self, the better decisions you make. The better decisions you make, the better life you have. So it begins with becoming aware of self. That lends itself to making better decisions, and that lends itself to having a much better life.
Listen, I see the production team here, taking pens and pencils and everyone's writing down. So that was definitely a golden nugget. Thank you so much for sharing that, Paul, and for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. I know you're a really busy person, but I really appreciate it.
I tell you, I got to big you up real quick. I love your energy.
Thanks.
I love your passion. I love the love that you have for your husband and the fact that you share that, without any hesitation. We really need more of you out here. So thank you for being you.
Oh my God, thank you, Paul. And with that, let's go ahead and wish good vibes to Paul as he gets ready to head back to the UK. Thank you so much again for coming on the show.